Hello and welcome. In this presentation I'm going to be talking about my policy on focus voting. But before I get into the details of focus voting, as I promised in my previous presentation, I just want to go back to the issue of tweedism democracy. And there is such a thing as self-funded tweedism. And at the moment we have a colourful gentleman by the name of Clive Palmer, and he is an example of self-promoting tweedism. You can vote for whoever you like, but just vote for me because I think I know what you want. But again, it's just his interpretation of what he thinks you want. And I suppose the question is, can you imagine how much Mr. Palmer is spending on his TV advertising? And it comes back to my point in the previous video that we don't get true representation because we're only getting people elected to Parliament who are not actually representing the views of you, the voters. And to Clive Palmer, I say to him, please, Clive, give the ads a rest. We have 4 months to go before the election. Really. So, rather than having this concept of these people who are thinking they know what you want, the 16 million voters out there, I'm going to present to you what I believe is a very workable alternative. And it's not about what I think you want, it's actually about what you do want. And this system is called focus voting. And the idea of focus voting is to deal with issues that are of national importance in isolation. Right? So as you deal with one issue at a time, and they have to be of national importance. So the process is when an issue is identified, then it is referred on to a focus vote, and that is done by the Australian Parliament. And I'll get into the Constitution and those issues in the next video. So the process is that first and foremost, the issue is identified. And then Parliament will set a date for the vote to take place. Once a date has been agreed upon, then 2 committees will be formed. And one committee will be in favour of whatever this particular issue will be, and one committee will be against what this particular issue will be. Now, these committees are independent of Parliament. They're not parliamentary committees, they are independent committees. And then these 2 committees will actually call for submissions from everyone. Anyone with a vested interest, any citizen of Australia, any stakeholders, community groups, anyone who wishes to make a submission to the committee either in favour or against the particular issue in hand, they will be able to do that. Then what will happen is that the committees combined will determine what the quarantine date will be. Now, the quarantine date is the date of whether, regardless the issue is adopted or not, so whether or not it is voted upon favourably or not, it'll be a quarantine date, will be a date in the future that this issue cannot be re-implemented into a focus vote. So in other words, once we've done it, then that's it. If it happens or it doesn't happen, we don't revisit it for a specific period of time. Now, it'll be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It would depend on what the issue was. Now, the committees will formulate arguments which reflects their views. So for arguments in favour and arguments against. And these arguments will be collected from submissions and from within the committee itself. And you'll find that with most issues, there will be maybe 6 to 12 unique arguments for each issue, for and against. But we hear a lot of noise, and that's where it gets very, very confusing and very overwhelming. But once you break it down, you might have 1,000 submissions on "I just don't like it." Now that's a valid reason, that's a valid opinion, but you don't want to hear it 1,000 times. And so that's the job of the committees, is to collate the arguments into maybe half a dozen, maybe 10 or 12 specific arguments, variations on the same theme. Now, once these arguments have been collated, each committee will submit their arguments to the alternative committee, and then they will then assess the arguments from each side and then provide counter arguments to those particular opposing opinions. Now, with the arguments for and against, the arguments are divided into two sections. The first section is, of course, substantiated arguments. So these are arguments that are proven. Okay, they're proven in fact. You can produce evidence, that evidence can be reproduced, and it says these are the facts. Then you have unsubstantiated arguments. So these are just opinions or based on personal experiences in terms of there's no evidence to support the argument put up. So someone might say that if we pardon me, if we do this in other countries, it has created issues. Now you have to be able to prove that. If you can't prove that, then it's a totally unsubstantiated argument. Now, with these arguments, they'll be in point form, and with each point, you'll be able to drill down further and collect more information if you want to. This is you and me and every member of the community. Once these arguments for and against have been released to the general public, then the Attorney General will set an implementation date. Now, the implementation date is a date with which parliaments, both houses of parliaments, House of Representatives and the Senate, must have approved the legislation for the particular issue that is being voted upon, assuming, of course, that that issue is successful. And the Attorney General is to set the date because he knows the agenda and the timetable for Parliament, and he'll know what is a reasonable period of time to have legislation drawn up and passed through parliaments without it being unnecessarily rushed, so the parliamentarians have ample opportunity to fine-tune the legislation to ensure that it is a workable solution to the issue at hand. Then once that is set, we come to the election date, and then all 16 million of us will vote on that particular issue. Now, whether you vote via your mobile phone, your computer, your tablet, you go to the local library or police station, there'll be many different ways that you can do it. But the basis is that this voting will be done on primarily an electronic basis. And of course, whatever the majority decide, that is the result. So if it's in favour, it goes through. If it's against, it fails, and not to be revisited for a period of time until you reach that quarantine date. So the process, as I said in the previous video, is 100% consultative. It is 100% democratic because every single Australian gets a say. It is 100% inclusive because anybody can make a submission to the committees. It is incredibly time efficient. It will promote constructive discussion, and it will be, at the end of the day, extremely cost efficient. It certainly won't be costing anywhere near $122 million like the same-sex marriage survey did. So we're talking a fraction of the cost. But the most important thing is it's actually a decision by the people. So we have made that decision. Now, I know that there'll be people out there saying, oh, this is not going to work. You know, there's people are not capable of making these decisions. And I disagree. Because I think if you actually look at your circle of friends and you take 10 people from your circle of friends and you say, okay, out of these 10 people, who do I think, whether I agree with them or not, but who do I think are capable of making a rational, reasonable decision, a moderate decision in relation to an important issue? And my theory is if you give people responsibility, they will make a responsible decision. Now, in actual fact, statistically, around about 70% of the voters fall within what I refer to as the moderate zone. Okay, so that's within one standard deviation of neutral. And don't worry about the term standard deviation, it's just a unit of measurement. But nearly 11 million of the 16 million voters fall in that one category of moderates. And we are a moderate nation, and the sky won't fall in. And of course, the idea is that it comes back to the old adage, be careful what you wish for because you may well get it. And I think when you give the general population the ability to make these decisions, they will make the right decision. Now, people say, oh, but you know, we don't have electronic voting at the moment. And that is true. But in actual fact, if you go onto the Australian Electoral website and you go into the section called Frequently Asked Questions, there is a statement there from the Electoral Commission. And the question is, why isn't electronic voting used at federal elections? And the answer is that they can do it, but the legislation doesn't allow them to do it. So that's where we are at the moment. So this is not something that cannot be done because the Australian Electoral Commission already has the ability to implement electronic voting. But the fact is that legislation as it stands doesn't allow for electronic voting. And you can look it up for yourself, and actually what I'll do is I'll put a link in the comments below. So in summary, what we're looking at with focus voting is essentially the same as the same-sex marriage survey, but instead of it being non-binding opinion poll, it is a binding vote that Parliament has to enact. So in my next video, I'll go over the necessary amendments to the Constitution to make this work and show you that it doesn't take much of a change to enable this focus voting to be an integral part of our democratic process. And once again, if you wish to contact me, my mobile number is 0481 239 177. My name is Nick Williams, and I will be running as an independent candidate for the Senate in the May 2019 general federal election. Thank you for watching.